Whether your beer is in a bottle, can, or glass, kick back and relax. It's better on draft.
Welcome, everybody. This is the Michigan series, episode number 17. My name is Ken. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it on this Friday. We're going to be having a few more guests here, technical issues, as well as, in the restaurant industry. Stuff happens all the time, and we know this and we appreciate it, which is why we're always thankful for when our guests are able to make it. So we do have a guest that's going to be running a little bit late, as well as a co-host. But with that in mind, my name is Ken. I am drinking an Old Nation Oktoberfest myself, and I do have a special beer I'm going to crack open once we introduce our guest. Dan, what do you got over there?
Doing the old Nick move today since he's not here. I've got the vodka soda going on, a little Stoli in there, and then I've got a collab from Bottle Logic and Tombstone called It's Frustrating, English barley wine.
That is actually a really good beer. I've had that because I always remember the Beer Fest logo.
Yep.
With that in mind, from Williamston, multi-time guest, we appreciate him coming back. Travis from Old Nation, how are you? And what are you drinking? Do you have something over there?
I am not. I'm drinking water, man. I've got football going on tonight and early tomorrow, so I might have a beer here a little bit later. If I do, I'll definitely have an Oktoberfest.
Well, I know you're over in East Lansing. I am saddened because last year the Miami Hurricanes were supposed to be at Michigan State, but due to COVID, that got canceled. So the home and home just turned into a at home in Miami. So I will be repping the U tomorrow for that matchup, and I am excited. We are doing a little bit of a promotion right now. There is a fun technical brewing prowess that Travis and our guest who will be on here in a little bit, Zach Typinski over at Urbanrest, is doing, and they want to kind of teach you guys a little bit more about the brewing industry, the technical differences between beers. But I'm going to shoot it right over to Travis. Travis, what are you guys doing to give us some more delicious beer?
Well, I mean, I guess more than trying to teach, we're just trying to entertain ourselves a little bit and do stuff that we really like doing, and we wonder if people will be interested in it. And right now, Urbanrest and Old Nation are making an alt beer. So the recipe is the same at both places. The yeast is the same. What we are changing are kind of fundamentally house techniques and characteristics. So what is fundamental to Williamston that is not to Urbanrest and Ferndale and vice versa is the water source. And then also the technique of brewing, and one particular technique that we're showcasing with this beer. So it's called Decoction Mashing. We are doing a Decoction Mash, which is an old, really traditional way to raise temperature within the mash, which is when the malt has been crushed and mixed with water. And Zach is doing at Urbanrest is doing what's called a single infusion mash, wherever he's mixing the grain in the water at one temperature and holding it there, and then continuing on with the brewing process. And now I wanted to come on here and have like a real sexy way to talk about this, but I don't think there is one. So that's what we're doing.
Well, back in 2018, episode 151, you actually joined us with Joe Thorner over at Brew Detroit to talk about M43 and Detroit M43 and the differences in water. So I guess what is your plan of action when you're trying to deal with a water source? Is the water source the same in Ferndale as it is in Detroit? Is it a little bit different? Like, how are you pre-gaming this before you go into the brewing process?
Yeah, it's fundamentally the same. And I spent years working in Detroit, and so I'm really familiar with that water. And there's not much you can't make with it. It's really great water for brewing. And it's particularly good without really any adjustments at all for lager brewing. So most of Old Nation, well, actually all of Old Nation's lagers are made in Detroit for that reason primarily. And really it was, Zach's good buddies with one of our Southeast Michigan sales manager, Shane, and with Alex, who does a lot of our out-of-state stuff as well. They got talking about a collaboration. Obviously, the first thing we both said is that we didn't really want to do anything crazy for this. We kind of wanted to explore what interests both of us, which happens to be, traditional continental beer. So we figured I'd done a lot with alt beer in the past before Old Nation, and he wanted to kind of dive into that. And so that is what we ended up doing.
Awesome. Now, you mentioned Detroit, and I have a little surprise. I bit the bullet. I spent the $12 on a bottle of beer, and I'm sure you already know where this is going. But a double dwarf I found at a store. I actually reached out to you to find out how old this beer is. How old do you think this beer is? As it's saying that it's brewed and bottled by Detroit Brewing Co. at Old Nation Brewing Co., Williamston, Michigan.
Yeah, both of those are, my partner Rick and I own both of those companies. And I imagine that was done 2016, maybe.
That's what we were thinking.
Yeah, early 2016, I guess. I can't remember right off the top of my head when the last time we made that was, but we were using that old German, that Enzinger filler for sure.
Now, back on that episode, which was sometime in 2016, I definitely gave you a very honest opinion of the beer.
Sure you did.
You gonna play a clip, Ken?
I mean, you can definitely go check it out if you actually go to our.
It's not alt beer. I think that's what it was.
If you go to our YouTube page for episode number 61, you can actually hit Detroit or Double Dwarf on the link to go straight to that part of the episode.
Yeah, enshrined.
Yeah, I wanted to revisit it, and you know what? Still feel the same way. It is not an alt beer, but this is drinking really well.
Yeah, good, man. Well, it doesn't say it's an alt beer on the label, so it's not surprising that it doesn't taste exactly like one, right?
I mean, it says traditional Doppelstick alt beer. What is a Doppelstick?
Yeah, did we talk about what that was?
We might have, but let's revisit it. I know Zach's on his way in here momentarily, so let's revisit it for a minute.
Yeah, the brewing techniques and the ingredients were absolutely traditional. A Sticka alt is just a really strong alt beer. They're generally not quite as strong as that one was. Doppelsticka are even stronger. Still not generally quite as strong as that one is. But you're right. It's not a regular alt beer, much like a regular IPA isn't an imperial IPA.
This definitely has and I'm sure I'm incorrect, but the flavor and profile kind of lends it to like a Belgian strong ale. Probably. I mean, I don't know if it's because of the age or anything like that, but when we go back and we rewind back to 2016, like I did not like barrel-aged beers in 2016. That it's a crazy thing to say now because I love barrel-aged beers. But I'm actually really excited I bought this beer, and I know there's 4 more bottles at the store, so I might be poking and prodding in. But
you're gonna let people know where it is. It's your honey hole for the beer you don't like.
I mean, I don't know. I don't want you to talk to your distributor to get it, pulled off the shelf. So
I won't.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I'm interested to know what that beer. I mean, I imagine it's pretty good still. I mean, that filler had pretty low oxygen.
It's Stony Creek. It's not Ypsilanti. It might be Milan. It might be one of the small towns in the Ypsilanti area. But yeah, they actually have a really decent amount of random older bombers that you can get on the shelf back when like the brewery was pumping out beers. AleSmith was coming in town like right away. There's a lot of good beers that you can get there, as well as plenty of other beers. They actually had a Alaskan Amber keg there, and I walked right by it, and I'm like, ooh,
like a mini keg or a keg?
No, like a full quarter barrel. And I asked the guy, I'm like, how much is it? And I'm like, I knew I wasn't going to buy it that day, but I knew if it was the right price, I was going to come back. But my kegerator is actually earmarked for the next beer, which is going to be a Moscow Mule from Odd Side Ales. Which my girlfriend and I love those Odd Side Ale seltzers, and when they get into our kegerator, they don't last very long.
That's pretty good.
You mentioned something. I want a little clarification. Did you say you still own Detroit Beer Co.?
Not beer company. No, that's the pub downtown. So we had an LLC when we started distributing that. It was a licensing company essentially that we established to do Detroit Brewing Company. And when we did the Dwarf and the Detroit Lager, and we did a Rodler and a Sanders chocolate stout, that was all under Detroit Brewing Company. But I was moving from brewery to brewery, just making that wherever there was space for years and years.
Are you still making Sanders, or any chance to bring it back?
I was actually going to ask. Yeah.
From what I understand, it's been sold from the 2 guys that we were working with to another company. So that's a relationship we'd have to rebuild, and it would Probably not is the short answer.
Couldn't you just adjust the recipe and, make your own?
Yeah. I mean,
you can't call it Sanders, though.
Yeah.
We can come up with a creative name. Call Matt Bush. We can come up with something.
Bander's Stumpy Cake.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right now, I'm not searching around too much for stuff like that to make, but we may at one point make another chocolate stout.
All right. Somebody did join. We're waiting for them to make their way through. But I want to bring up, we're having a little feedback from that person too. We're waiting for the cam to show up too. This is great entertainment, guys. If you're not listening live, you can find the video over at youtube.com/betterondraft. It sounds like a Dani, so that means Dani is here, actually beating Zach. Welcome. I'm gonna transition over and try to go here. Dani, while I'm getting you set up in here, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking wine.
Oh.
So my mother came by and she brought wine, and I didn't feel like switching.
You got a little Mad Dog, or what do you have?
It's the Malbec. I don't know where it's from. Oh, are you joking?
Yeah, a little Mad. You're not drinking Mad Dog right now, as far as wine? Maybe a little Boone's Farm?
That's the Friday one. Yeah, this is the Friday one. So.
All right. Well, we appreciate you joining. We're still waiting on Zach to come in. I did get a little text message that says it's going to be a few more minutes. Obviously, dealing with restaurants, we understand that, and we appreciate Travis being here. I have no idea. I mean, he was being very cryptic, and even said, "I understand I'm being very cryptic," which is perfectly fine. It's not my business; it's his business, and therefore we're just here for the fun ride. So. Let's talk. I know we said we were going to talk a little bit more technical, but while we have the opportunity to catch up with you a little bit, you guys have been carry out for the past year and a half or so. Your kitchen is open, I believe, for carry out. Your beer is carry out only, obviously, because you can't drink inside the pub.
That's true.
Talk to us about the last year and a half. What are some? Let's talk positives. What's a positive that you're going to be taking out of this past year and a half into the future once we've round the corner one day?
Yeah. It seems like. I guess if you look at IRI data, kind of performance of brands. Kind of regional brands at least, or even national brands here in Michigan and really pretty much all across the country. You saw people, it was interesting to see what people actually liked, what they felt comfortable with. And that's kind of what buying patterns, they didn't shift completely. I mean, people were still buying new beers and weird beers and all that kind of stuff. But you saw this kind of return to stuff like Two Hearted, which is a great beer, and people should do that. Centennial, same thing. For us, it was for sure M43 just went nuts. And I think for a lot of breweries that distribute regionally, at least, there was this kind of cool, I don't know if everybody went to their corners a little bit or just, again, kind of just was drinking what made them feel most comfortable, but it was a weird and cool shift to see happen. And I think more than that, the support that people showed to local breweries, particularly neighborhood breweries, where folks were stopping by and picking up beer. And obviously a lot of the guys at the neighborhood breweries were doing as much as they could to get the beer out to people and really interact with their community, shows what I think brewers have known for a really long time, which is the impact a community can have on a brewery, and a brewery can also have on a community. So I think a lot of stuff that existed and kind of just nobody was noticing was sort of laid bare in a really positive way this last year with regard to small breweries and big breweries. It's been interesting.
So I have a question here, because I'm actually out here in Phoenix these days. You're one of the 4 brewers from Michigan that really get distributed out here. How are you seeing your sales going outside of the state of Michigan? Is it as big as you see in Michigan, or what's it like getting outside the state?
Yeah, I mean, about half our sales are out of state, generally outside of the state. One of the things that we had to learn over the last couple of years is that, you can't just go into a state and expect the beer to do well. There's a level at which it will function like that, and I think Arizona is a good example. where that distributor kind of takes orders and sends a couple cases here and a couple cases there. And we're on it a lot of places, but we're not really moving a great deal of volume in that state. The farther away you get, I mean, this is all pretty intuitive, but the farther away you get from home, the more you have to work to build a market. But, you know, places like Chicago for us are great. Wisconsin's great. Indiana, inexplicably, is phenomenal. And there are a lot of states like that, too, where, you know, if it's within a day's drive from here, we can get down there and actually introduce ourselves to people. And that still makes a big difference.
All right, I want to cut in a little bit because we're going to be bringing in, hopefully, as all things are going through, Zach over here. I do apologize, everyone. Again, things happen, and we understand that, and we appreciate y'all listening. Boom, there is Zach from Urbanrest Brewing. Let's make sure perfect audio is working. I hear you. Great.
Sorry. I really appreciate you being so patient. I had an emergency situation with an employee at the brewery, so
I want to know what you're drinking. Do you have a celebratory we got over this drink that you have?
Yeah, actually, this is what I grabbed. 8.5% Belgian triple from New Belgium.
Nice.
Oh, geez.
8% or higher on this guy. You know, it's straight from the bottle as well. Like, I don't need a glass, nothing, just straight from the bottle.
Drinking with sediment on the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best part. That's the tasty part. So we talked a little bit briefly with Travis regarding what you guys are doing. Why don't you talk to me a little bit? Because you guys are all open fermentation over at Urbanrest still, correct?
No.
Oh, that's changed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so we do have some conicals. You know, our lager production, obviously, with bringing those in, those are all sealed ferments. So, yeah, we do still have the tanks, obviously, and we still use them, but we do have some quote unquote modern fermentation methods still.
Your lagers are fantastic, by the way.
Appreciate it. Thank you. That's a huge compliment.
Let's take a question from the audience, which is me, an idiot regarding beer. Can you open ferment lager?
Oh yeah, open fermented lager is very, very common. You know, it's being done all over the country and all over the world as well. You know, there are some additional control points, obviously, but yeah, that's 100% still happening all over the place.
Here's a real question: Can you open ferment seltzer?
You can open ferment anything.
Oh, yeah. Even better.
Anything can be open fermented, all right? And I would make an argument that the yeast express themselves a lot more freely in an open environment that doesn't involve all that osmotic pressure.
Nice. I would say some do, for sure. Some are industrial yeasts, you know, they're made for that kind of stuff. But particularly wheat beer yeast and more phenolic characteristic yeasts like that absolutely behave better in the context of open fermentation.
Now, before we get into the technical side, I want to promote you a little bit, Zach, over at Urbanrest. You guys recently opened up your second location, a satellite tap house over on 9 Mile, correct?
Correct, yep.
And I saw ice cream there, alcoholic ice cream. Why don't you break down real quick how? Just how
everything's got its freezing point, right? Okay, you know, and so I like to experiment with flavor. I always have, and you know, saw this as an opportunity to potentially involve you know, something else to kind of elevate that flavor experience. And so I figured, why not try and figure out how I can make soft serve alcoholic, you know, and not only embody the same spirit that I'm a very traditional brewer, you know. I employ a lot of traditional methods, and my guys would probably, you know, really question, you know, Zach making, you know, alcoholic soft serve. But yeah, just another side little passion project. You know, wanted to mix those flavors up and see how they responded together. And really all ice cream is you know, particles in suspension, just as beer is particles in suspension. They just have different freezing points.
That's God's work, sir.
It really is.
Well, I mean,
go on.
No, that's it. I mean, like I said, it's not exactly Reinheitsgebot, but you know.
Oh no.
You know, and there's many different.
Ken, you're gonna remember that I said that, Ken. You were talking all about the Rhinelander boat.
First of all, you're talking pre-show context, which nobody on the show is going to understand.
That was the three of us.
I didn't tell
Travis. I didn't tell Travis that we were making, beer soft serve. He might not have done this podcast or this collaboration with me had he known this project was happening.
Dude, I make New England IPA all the time. I'm way less.
Let's talk about this collaboration a little bit. What are you brewing?
So we're making alt beer. Yep, top fermented, amber ale.
Is it an amber ale or is it an alt beer?
It's an alt beer, yeah, absolutely. It's amber in color, 100%, and is ale by yeast specification.
Depends on who's buying it.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit.
Ken's gonna walk in there and be like, "This isn't an alt beer. Are you calling it an amber or this?" Ken is gonna be one of those guys that makes you mad.
Oh no, it
doesn't make me mad.
Yeah.
Travis back on episode 61 is like, who the fuck is this schmuck? Why did I drive all the way out here to be? Well, first of all, I don't think I lectured you. I didn't tell you, this isn't an alt beer. I said I just don't like it.
I think you had been drinking all day in Canada.
Oh my God, it was that episode.
Yep.
Wait, what was
the long story short of it? I played 9 hours of Pai Gow at Caesars Windsor, made about $1 and drank 8 beers. So really,
one of those shows.
For 9 hours, I was drinking for free. I made a whole $1, and one of those types of shows. But I mean, back in the day, we were a lot shittier.
Back in the day, we show up.
That's for sure. I want to talk a little bit because Zach, you mentioned obviously amber in color. There are a lot of breweries who, when they name these beers, they name them styles that are style adjacent because a lot of people don't understand beer styles. I guess from a technical standpoint, what is the difference between an alt beer and an amber? And the follow-up question would be, why do breweries like Alaskan make the decision to call it an amber, even though it does say on the bottle alt beer, but when you see Alaskan amber, I think you just assume amber ale.
Well, I mean, it's really about consumer perception, right? And how we as brewers can communicate our story most effectively to the consumer is really, how we try and frame it up. And so Alaskan is catering to an incredibly broad audience, across a huge multi-state, distribution footprint. How can they most effectively, get across their point to that consumer, and what percentage of the consumer really even knows what alt beer is? And in that, small percentage that does know what alt beer is, do they know that it stands for more than just old beer? Like what are the different layers of the onion, that we can peel off? And so I think it's just about appeal to that consumer. And once you appeal to that consumer, then you can uncover the different layers and talk about the intricacies. But ultimately, it is an amber colored ale. Whether or not it's alt beer or amber ale, lies in the different recipe formulation, the grain, the malt, the hops, the water, the yeast, it's, that's where all the different details and different style recognitions lie, right?
So let me ask you this, because we've had guests in the past that said they have named beer as something different because if they see the style of beer it is, it would put them off from trying it. Like, perfect example is an ESB. Most people, ESBs are hard to find most places you go. I mean, is it better off to name a beer something similar like Alaska does for the amber to get people to actually try it? And would either of you do that to try and get more people? You have done it.
Oh yeah. When we were at the pub in Detroit, I made an English mild and it was good. But nobody bought it. And at the time we had a bartender who was really good at chalk art. He was doing our chalkboards, which is normal now. And I had him erase the mild ale chalkboard and write baseball beer on there. And the alcohol content was low, obviously.
Baseball beer.
Yeah. And it sold like that, man. It was crazy. I made it all season and kept making it for years.
Well, think about the perception that you as experienced consumers have when you hear the words English pale ale or extra special bitter. Where, I mean, they're pretty much synonymous unless you want to get into the small little semantics, but like the customer, responds more to like, all right, I know what English pale ale is, but extra special bitter, like, it's not bitter enough. It's too bitter. It's too malty. It's this weird, like, no man's land that people have a tough time, identifying with. And really, we're just trying to, like, make it more approachable for them to identify with, right?
Yeah. I mean, I could turn the question about alt beer and amber ale around and say, what is an amber ale?
That's
right?
fair.
I imagine what you would say is exactly what an alt beer is, I mean, whether it's cool fermented or not, I guess would be the main point in question. But I mean, especially in American craft brewing, styles are so broad in the first place. I mean, you can drill down and say, on if you can fit it all on the label. We try to do it with M43, like what all's in it, and what the thing is about this beer that you'll see when you pour it out. You try and talk about it, but I mean, at some point you have to kind of meet people where they are and say, well, this is an IPA, right? Now, if somebody in Michigan had just, or anywhere, just come up with New England IPA, and IPAs weren't popular, like the most popular craft beer segment in existence, then probably they wouldn't have called it an IPA, because it doesn't really have that much to do with IPAs, except for that they're traditional IPAs, except for that they both use a lot of hops, right? Much the way in that barley wine and imperial stouts both use a lot of malt, but neither one are really all that similar to each other, except for that they're strong, right? So I think the way of brewers meeting people where they were with New England IPAs is a good example, is by just calling it an IPA because it uses a bunch of hops, even though it's totally different, and kind of move on from there. Let people draw their own conclusions and just see whether they like it or not.
I want to
something.
sorry, I'm gonna cut in, Dan. I do apologize. I'll write to you
okay.
after. Just because I want to follow up as someone who, as people who listen to the show understand, I don't like IPAs. And what is the technical definition, if you will, of an IPA? Like, as we're making this, and we're talking a little bit more technical as opposed to the business side for this podcast, how are you brewing it? What ingredients are you putting in that it's declared as an IPA?
There are written standards for what it should taste like.
Okay.
But there aren't really any written standards for how much of what you need to put into it to make it an IPA. So, for example, in traditional brewing, the addition of wheat, for example, would be a huge difference in beers, and brewers would talk about it and generally define it as a different style. There are IPAs that people drink, not you, Ken, but people drink all the time that have wheat in it and some that don't, right? You have IPAs that are, have some hop haze in it. I'm talking about West Coast IPAs and some that don't. You have, Midwestern IPAs, so-called, or mountain IPAs, they're also called now, which essentially are much maltier. They're more of, they're using stewed malts like Munich malt, even darker Munich malts, Vienna malts, and things of that nature, which completely change the character of the malt in that beer. But essentially what it means is it's got a lot of hops, right? And you go, well, it's, over 50 IBU or over 45 IBU and, so much dry hopping. But pale ales are dry hopped and IPAs go imperial quite often. And it's these huge, broad categories that to try and say this is what an IPA is something that you do. It's something that I see people who are like maybe a year or two into craft beer talk about a lot, right? Like, what is an IPA, right?
So let's go back to this idea popped in my head. This might be the alcohol talking, but when it comes to New England IPAs, do you think maybe it would have been a better move to call it like boozy OJ or orange juice to, capture some of that mimosa crowd as well? Do you think it could be an even bigger slice of the pie if you cashed in on that on top of the beer drinkers?
I think brewers did a pretty good job talking about juice and shit. I think, the malt bill is like a huge wit beer, right? Generally. So what it reminds me of for a lot of different reasons is just a clean Belgian base, essentially, right? With the addition of oats and a lot of oats and a lot of wheat and generally Pilsner malt. I mean, that's not an IPA grain bill at all. That's like a wit grain bill. You're just kind of amping it up for body and ABV. And then with regard to the dry hopping, that is just different than if we were paying attention to different things than anybody was paying attention to before. There were brewers like Nate, who works with me, who always dry hopped, generally at the end of primary fermentation, because he liked the way hops tasted better that way. But I mean, it wasn't until I read a paper by Sapporo in 2006, which is pretty deep into the IPA time, that anybody talked about like biotransformation and all the stuff that's happening to make New England IPAs with there.
Now, before I bring in Dani, because I know Dani has a question for Zach, because we're in the technical episode, I'm just going to keep asking technical questions that I may or may not know that the listener may or may not know. This is work pulling in when I say user. Travis, what is dry hopping?
Dry hopping is a phrase brewers use to describe using hops during or after primary fermentation. So you're not putting them in the kettle where the wort is hot. You're adding them, as I say, after or during the time the yeast is doing its job.
Then what is double dry hopping?
That is something brewers say to mean a lot of hops. To different brewers, it means different things, right? Double the amount or more than one occasion, right, of dry hopping.
Fair enough. Dani, take it away.
Fair enough. So I'm curious about the Urbanrest kombucha. I had some really good stuff maybe 2 years ago. I don't drink kombucha a lot because I get heartburn a minute after I drink it. I'm sorry. I'm old. But is the 9 Mile location brewing kombucha as well?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, we have kombucha there as well.
Is there any, can ice cream be made? I'm just not sure how they connect. Do they at all? Is there any like crossover there, or is it with the beer?
You want kombucha ice cream? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. I think I do.
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel like there's a lot of people that would look at that and just be like, I'd try it.
Well,
Yeah, there probably is.
garlic.
Again, you're balancing flavors, the acidic component, and the sweetness component that you have in the custard. Yeah, absolutely. Those play together, in a lot of different ways. What we've experimented a little bit with, a boozy kombucha soft serve, but honestly, we do mostly raw, unpasteurized, 0.5% alcohol kombucha, and so it's technically considered as non-alcoholic, and so we've dabbled a little bit with the alcoholic side of kombucha, but ultimately it's a different product for us, and we'd like to keep
what it is.
Mostly without the alcohol, but yeah, does acid have a place in a fatty dish? Yeah, absolutely, as it does in soft serve too.
Now, Travis, I want you to know that one of your employees wants kombucha ice cream, so I think you might need to do something up there, and maybe when you go and or you might have already started brewing the beer over at Urbanrest, but maybe you need to go do that and make some kombucha soft serve ice cream.
Yeah, that sounds like quite an undertaking, man. I'll let Zach handle it for now.
I tell you what, like Travis and I were having a tough enough time wrapping, just decoction mashes and different, small variables to the brewing. We didn't know we were going to be talking about kombucha soft serve. And
I'll get tips on all kinds of soft serve.
Yeah, but if you want to get technical, we can talk about how to manage acetobacter, in a clean brewery and simultaneously produce, clean products on both ends. If we wanted to make it applicable to the podcast,
I might take you up on that, but I want to come back to obviously you guys are doing a collaboration. When can people get this beer? Is it going to be distro? Is it going to be at breweries? Like, where are we going to be able to get these beers?
So we're going to do an event at Urbanrest that's very traditional. So we're going to have, the Kobe style servers, the Kronsen wreaths, that you get at a traditional, brewery in either Cologne or Dusseldorf to try and recreate that experience. And so we haven't launched a specific date for that. It will be, at some point in October, but we've brewed the beer at our facility now, and we brewed the beer at Old Nation in Williamston now. We were a couple weeks behind just because of some limitations, on our production methods. We don't have a centrifuge. We don't have a means to, clarify, and so we do a little more slow and low, just cold, let gravity do its thing. And so We're out a couple weeks ahead of Travis right now, but we're going to release the beers in cans through both facilities. So Urbanrest will have cans. Old Nation will also have cans. I don't know. I can't speak specifically to the distribution footprint that it might see for drafter package within Old Nations, but ours will be 100% through our tap room. We won't see any distribution.
Go on, Travis.
Well, we're only doing about 400 case equivalents. So, I mean, we'll have some kegs where they're interested retailers, and we'll have cases where they're interested retailers, but it's certainly not a broad push. And I think that's good, man. I mean, I think what people should do whatever they want. I think what people can be checking out in this is, Zach's talking about how he doesn't have a lot of equipment and he doesn't have, some certain things that a brewer would want to make his job easier. And we are lucky enough to have that at Old Nation. But I think that what people can check out here is how, given time, right, really the equipment that we use here, while beneficial to a production facility, is not absolutely necessary to create a really good product, right? But what you sacrifice there is tank time, right? You have to let it hang. You have to do what Zach is doing in order to let the yeast do its job and stop doing its job and come out a solution, and any number of different things that it's doing that he's making happen in a less high five brewery. And I think that's something that people, might be interested in checking out too. And that ultimately is the push here, is not to, like I said, not to freak out squares with a really big beer or a super hoppy beer or a beer with other stuff in it that's not normally in beer or that doesn't taste like beer, but, a beer that is made in two different relatively traditional ways. One a little bit more modern, but using a more traditional technique, and one a little less modern, but using a more modern technique, and see what comes out the other end.
I mean, that's really what it's all about for us, as brewers. Like, we don't want to go so far as to say this is like a brewer's beer. I think that's been said very many times. But like, talking with the Old Nation brewer, when we were there, like, it's nice to just shake it up a little bit and do something a little different. Because let's be honest, like, IPAs are the forefront of both of our portfolios, and most people are drinking IPAs, and behind that, it's lager, pale lager. And so to do, an amber ale that's also lager, that's also, pretty polarizing, like, this is passion project for us. It really is. And so it has to appeal to, a narrower scope for us to kind of convey the message. But that's what we're trying to do, is just tell the story behind it and talk to people, about those very subtle differences. I mean, we're doing an infusion mash at our place on a direct fire kettle. And we're not centrifuging it, and at Old Nation, they're doing a decoction mash in, a steam fired vessel with a centrifuge. And so, like, even those very few variables right there that have been changed are going to produce starkly different results, we think, but really the same end goal, which is, nice, clean, just amber ale. Like I said, I know we keep saying this, but like, yeah, it's approachable, and it's for us. It really is, and it's for the common folk as well. It just doesn't have to be anything more.
This question is for either of you, just because you've both thrown the term around and I don't know it personally. What is decoction?
Well, I'm gonna defer to Travis on this guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Zach said single infusion. So it's good to maybe explain both of the ways that mashing is done, kind of in parallel. Infusion mashing. Okay, let me start even farther back. For those people that don't know, and I'm sorry if you know, you can fast forward maybe. But for those of you who don't know, the idea of mashing is for the brewer to have some influence in the way that the malt processes through into beer, right? So the only time you're actually touching malt when you're a brewer outside of loading your mill is when you're mixing it with water in order to extract, at least partially, a lot of the stuff that you want in the malt. So that can be protein. It certainly is sugars. It absolutely is color. It's a number of different things. And what brewers use in order to manipulate how those sugars particularly come out of the malt, and in some cases protein and even acid, is by pausing that mash at different temperatures, because there are enzymes in the grain already that are primed to eat protein, right? Those are called proteases, or sugars, and those are generally amylases, and a lot of different enzymes that are endogenous. They're to the grain. They're present on the grain already. And what brewers are doing is creating an environment where those enzymes can work and further manipulate the grain even more than the maltster did in order to create the product at the end of the line that he or she wants. So an example of that is what's called a step infusion. And it's probably the simplest example of a step mash. Essentially, you're mashing in, usually, if you're doing a step mash, mashing around 120 degrees or so. That'll serve as an acid protein rest, mostly protein rest. In the case of wheat beers, you might mash it at 114 degrees. That'd be a ferulic acid rest, because that yeast really likes that acid and tends to work better with an abundance of it. And then raise the temperature several more times for different saccharification rests, which are ways that starches are converted, for example, into fermentable sugars or unfermentable sugars, depending on the temperature. Okay, so that's step infusion, right? It can be a number of different temperatures with one mash. Decoction is the same, except for instead of using, as Zach was talking about, like a steam jacket or even a direct fire to heat the mash up in stages, you're withdrawing a portion of the mash, boiling it, and then reintroducing it back into the mass of the rest of the mash in order to raise temperatures. And a couple reasons why that's interesting is that, a lot of traditional brewers here in the States and overseas swear by that technique, right? Absolutely swear by it. You're cooking out sulfur from the malt. They say you are creating some unfermentable sugars, but just enough that it lends body to the beer, and they're different. I mean, a lot of it's voodoo, but I think it's undeniable that a decocted beer is different than a step infusion beer. And that is what we're exploring. So the answer to your question is, instead of just raising the whole thing up degree by degree, like you would a pot on the stove, you're taking some off, boiling it, and then putting it back in order to raise the temperature. And you can see, if you can imagine a traditional brewery, you can see why that would be a more effective thing to do than trying to accurately raise the temperature of an entire massive mash, particularly in a big brewery. So it's a long answer to a short question.
I know some pretty talented home brewers who have a Hefeweizen for which they do a triple decoction.
Yeah.
It's like a 9-hour or 8-hour brew day. It's the only Hefeweizen I like, personally.
Yeah.
Have you ever done that? A triple?
Yes. Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is
When
that
I was
normal? You too?
What's that?
Have you ever done a triple decoction?
Not as a professional brewer. We don't have we have limitations at our system, but as a home brewer, absolutely. But at that point, I think there's a lot of brewers that can say you can't make traditional Hefeweizen without that that mash schedule. To be quite honest, as Travis was saying about the ferulic acid rest, it's quintessential to bringing out that clove flavor. Maybe most of the Hefeweizens you have not been triple decocted, and that's why you haven't liked them. But yeah, it brings out a whole different character, and that's why we want to do this here, because even just very simple, deviations from a standard process is gonna extract a different character, and we want to see those characters.
And we do have a couple of questions from the chat as far as Facebook goes. Now, question actually for both of you. First off, Mark thinks that German Hobo was awesome. Travis, will we see more of that malt liquor in the future? And then Zach, do you have... I don't know. Mark.
I got to know him because he's the only guy that thinks that, maybe. Not the only guy.
Geez.
I mean, Dan is a huge craft malt liquor fan.
I really am.
Easily, if I want to give Dan a gift when he comes back into Michigan, all I got to do is give him a St. Mickey's or whatever it's called from Rochester Mills. Old St. Mick's, that's it.
Yep.
And I'm the best friend ever. Like,
yeah, I mean that beer was no, probably not. It's not the same guys at Dark Horse.
What about you, Zach? You have plans to make a malt liquor coming up?
No. Yeah.
It's like, no. Next question.
There's such a world of flavors, and just like, malt, hops, water, and yeast, it's crazy. We have thousands and thousands of different compounds that we can try and harness in very, very different ways. Like, not that it's not worth pursuing, for other people, for sure, because it's viable. But like, for me, it's about back to the roots, and that's really why I wanted to collaborate with Travis and what I believe in for the future of craft beer. And it's back to the roots. There's a reason these styles have been consumed for generations now. We cannot let those die. We can't let them dwindle out, and we've got to present them here, on a forum where people can feel the passion and hear the story, because otherwise they just go away, man. And we just end up making, malt liquor.
Right.
Well, a good answer.
Yeah, I'll say that, it's not, I don't know, having been around this industry and working in it as a brewer for 20 years has been you've seen the pendulum kind of swing back and forth a couple of times. Because when I started, in the late 90s, early 2000s, everybody knew all the basic styles. They knew what they were supposed to taste like. People were getting into expanding, at this time kind of barley wine was new and imperial stout was new. And, what's now West Coast IPA was relatively new. Two Hearted was just coming out at that time. So what people think about as, old and kind of passe now was brand new then. And people were saying the same thing about, for example, West Coast IPA back then as compared to English IPA, as they now talk about New England IPA compared to West Coast IPA. Right. This is why that whole conversation for me is just kind of funny. But I think what we've lost is it's this kind of look at me thing where breweries really have to do something crazy in order to get noticed, because there's such a high level of competition. And for a while that just kind of became the industry. And whether that's good or bad is not for me to say. But I do know that it is refreshing to meet somebody like Zach and other, young brewers that are super interested in old styles and what brewing was and what it, what beer tastes like when it just tastes like beer, and why that's good, and how you can make cleaner beer that treats people better and stays stable longer, and all kinds of really good stuff. And like Zach said, I really hope that we don't lose that. It's really important that.
All right. So Richard in the chat wants to know if Hellas from Old Nation, or when is Hellas from Old Nation coming back?
So we'll do Hellas again under a different name. I've been convinced to call it Fritz Lager. That'll come out in October, really close to when this alt beer comes out. Late October, early November is when that'll come. So that'll be in 16-ounce cans. We had made a push to do that in 12-ounce 12-packs, but with can supplies the way they are right now, it's easy for us to get 16-ounce cans and difficult to get enough 12-ounce cans to make commitments. So 16-ounce cans for the winter, and then hopefully next spring or summer, if all goes well, we'll look at the 12-packs again.
Travis, I got a question for you. Sure. So my nickname growing up was Fritz.
Yeah.
Can you tell us the story behind the Fritz name? Was it someone that was inspirational to you, or what's the Fritz reference?
Yeah, it sounds like Bud. That's what it is. It's vaguely German and it's one syllable. It's easy to remember.
That's not as exciting as I thought it was going to be.
No, I mean, it's not even the dude. The oldest dude we know in my family with that name spoke Gaelic. It's not even German. Right. We don't even know what it is.
Well, it speaks a little bit to what we were talking about earlier, with you just called it Hellas, and folks maybe, didn't understand it, for whatever reason. And so it's going to see, a little bit of a rebrand so that it can be more approachable to people, but it's going to be the same exact beer, and right. So, does it need to be called Hellas, because ultimately it's just pale lager, just, again, there are minute differences between Czech pale lager and Northern German pale lager and Southern German pale lager, but like, does it matter in the end? Like, it's just pale lager, right?
Yeah, right. That's what I think. I mean, we're using a different yeast that I think kind of smooths it out a little bit.
Okay.
We learned a lot from making the Helles on that big 100-barrel system, and that's one of the things about brewing in Detroit is that, your pilot batches are 4,000 case equivalents. There's no net. You just go in and make 4,000 cases and hope it turns out. So the degree of difficulty is a little bit higher, even if you are making something that you're used to.
I gotta interrupt you real quick. Are you doing more than just M43 in kegs at your other facility right now?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so that's changed since the last time we spoke,
Yeah.
which threw me off a little bit.
Yep.
So what are you doing at that facility? You said a pilot batch, which is ridiculous. I would assume you were doing pilot batches at your smaller facility.
No. Well, I mean, making I guess my point here is that it's a huge Braucon, which is like a big fancy German maker of brewing equipment. It's a 100-barrel system. And the tanks that they have there are 400 barrels. So you don't get a chance to do, I mean, I'm not wondering what kind of malt I should use for a Helles at this point in my career, but I am wondering, like how much evaporation is on this system. Will it be the same if we're doing exactly what it is that I want to be doing? And so you can't just make 400 barrels. You can make 400 barrels of beer and throw it out if it's no good. But I think the challenge here for me, and what's interesting for me in Detroit, particularly with the traditional series, is just kind of to go in without a net and say, okay, here's, $180,000 worth of beer. If I screw it up, then I'm out that much money. It's kind of like gambling, I guess.
Well, I want to do a callback real quick to a great episode we had, which is better on Draft 243, which we had Greg Hall, the originator of the Bourbon County brand stout, currently owns Virtue Cider, along with Mike over at Goose Island, and they actually gave us a little bit of an introduction on how much money they put down the drain at the New York facility once ABI InBev purchased Goose Island and they tried making 312 over in New York. And the I told you so type look that occurred at that time when they put a New York 312 versus a Chicago Goose Island 312, and all the AB InBevs like, these don't taste the same. And it's always a sad thing when a brewer says they have to pour the beer, because obviously you'll get some schmuck be like, oh, I drink the beer. But that is you don't want to put your name on that because the quality is not good. You're stamping Old Nation, you're stamping Urbanrest on a beer because you say, I believe in this beer. And there are people who have put out bad beers that, for lack of better words, and they shipwrecked. I feel like Zach caught it. I don't know if Travis caught it.
I caught it. Yeah, I'm not reacting.
That's fair. And you just can't come back from that. There is one more comment from the chat before we get into the final question. We're each going to ask you one more final question, then we'll let you get on your merry way. Obviously, it's dark in Ferndale. You're at the brewery, so I'm sure you want to get home soon, Travis. But from the chat, Justin Riopel, friend of the show, brewer over at Detroit Beer Co., wanted to make sure you know that he is still trying to sell that English mild over at DBC.
Call it baseball beer, Justin. You're being more.
So I don't know if he
football beer. It's the right season.
Yeah, whatever it is, man. Whatever people like. Pokemon. I don't know what people like. I'm old.
Pokemon, go to the brewery.
Hold some for me. I'll drink it.
Yeah.
All right. As we finish the show, we're each going to bring up a question to the guests, and then we'll give you guys a little bit of opportunity to promote where we can find your beer, your brewery, and obviously the upcoming event is still in limbo. Before we get that, are you guys bringing that beer to the Detroit Beer Festival over in Eastern Market, or?
Yeah, I think we're gonna.
Okay.
Yeah, we are not planning on attending that festival right now. Maybe be able to back some beer into Old Nation's booth, maybe. But
I know the brewer. Let me give him a call.
No.
Yeah, we'll figure that out.
No, he's got to put his double New England IPA and triple New England IPA and quadruple strawberry mango New England IPA.
Those things that will send my children to college IPA.
You know what? We've honest to God, on our show, we've brought up Old Nation a litany of like so many times, just from how one brand can turn around a brewery, and how humble you were that first episode. You were like, I don't know what this is going to do. I don't think any of us did, because there were New England IPAs in the state at that time that just didn't take off as well as that one did. And you started an entire trend within the state itself that allowed for people to have fun, do what they love, make a beer, make some money, which is the important part as a brewery and business owner. But we've had some amazing beers. I personally, and I tell you what, Travis, you say, it's not an IPA because it's a New England IPA and that's just the closest name, but I love your tart strawberry M43. I'm just a sucker for it. And in that fridge,
you don't like IPAs, but you like strawberry M43.
Yes. And honest to God, in that fridge, you know what I buy all the time? That's always my beer of choice for when I'm home or I'm going somewhere. I buy a 4-pack of B43 all the fucking time.
Good.
That beer is so good, low carb, so good.
Thanks. Thanks.
That I just I love it. But
thank you.
All right, let's put a bow on this.
This makes up officially for all the double dwarf shit you said.
Listen, I've been drinking this the entire show. I've been enjoying it. I'm sure during the news segment, which is going to be the next episode of Better on Draft for September 17th, I'm definitely going to be feeling it. It's going to be coming out of my mouth, the slurred words, for sure, because this is cracking at 10.3, and I'm almost done with this bomber.
Good Lord.
I mean, I'm not a quitter, so... Dani, what is your final question for these two gentlemen?
My final question is, do you ever get a little bummed out when you have to change what you call a beer so that people will buy it? Like, you're not going to call it Hell's, one of my very favorite styles of beer. And it's a perfect Hell's, by the way. But anyway, if you don't get bummed out, just a little disappointed when you have to change it. No.
The integrity of the beer, is always a concern with whether or not the name actually conveys to the consumer. Sometimes this is the mark, and if honestly, if you're a brewer that doesn't have humility, you're not a good brewer. You have to have humility in this industry, and you have to be able to say all right, this is Hellas, and maybe it didn't convey right, but I still want people to drink my pale, bottom fermented lager, and whatever I have to call it, to get them to try it. The mission is the same. The name, can always convey itself better, but we're just trying to connect with a consumer.
We don't start with the name. The name is always the last thing we do. Oh shit, fucking M43 is the road.
You start with style, though. We start
generally with a question, right? Or an idea about it, right? So it only has to make sense to us, right? Or to me, right? With the Hellas, it was, will it be possible for me to make the beer that I want to make here on that system? And the challenge, frankly, of distributing it and trying to turn people onto it and all that kind of stuff. I mean, my guess was no, right? Probably I'll make a good beer, but probably I'm not going to be able to get people real turned down about it just because of what craft beer is. Okay. And because I didn't really talk about it that much. I mean, we posted on Facebook or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really expect it to do much. I just kind of wanted to see how much, I don't like lager people were left, right? That just aren't going to bite it because they're oh, this tastes like my dad's Budweiser or whatever. And I get where they're coming from. I come from a really small town where everybody drinks whatever they drank for the last 20 years, and that's all they drink. You can drink whatever you like. But I really like that style of beer. And so to name it something else was not tough. I mean, I've done that a bunch. It's just like Zach said, I mean, it's, you got to meet people where they are, man. If the name is what's in between people and putting the beer down their neck, then change the name.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So this question is for both of you. You're about to face off against each other in a game of Edward 40 Hands. What are you drinking to be able to outdrink the other? Zach, let's start with you.
Oh, this is the first time we ever had two people on the show.
Yeah.
Zach, do you think you could outdrink Travis? And if so, which 40s are you choosing?
I have a little bit of age on my side. I think I could, to be quite honest, and I think I'm probably going with like fucking Milwaukee's Best Light or something real raggedy, like
Nice.
Raggedy.
yeah, real raggedy. I mean, if I got to do Edward 40 Hands, yeah, I'm gonna take it back to college days for sure, like for sure.
Yeah.
Travis, I mean, that was a gauntlet throwdown and an insult in the middle of that for how old you are.
We're brewers. We're just presenters of facts. That's all.
Yeah, I am in fact old, first of all. And second of all, I would absolutely win this competition because I would drink O'Doul's. Loophole.
Fair enough. Do they sell O'Doul's in 40s?
I was going to say, do they sell O'Doul's in 40s?
An answer only age can respond with, gentlemen. Right? Yeah.
Wow.
Well played, Travis.
Very well played.
All right, my final question. I've got one for each of you. They're going to be a little bit different. Travis, I went into the archives, and I found out things you said over a decade ago. And I want you to quote on things you said over a decade ago.
Okay.
All right, you're in 2011. You were working for Detroit Beer Co., founder brewer at that time, or owner brewer, and you stated, "We feel like pushing." This is 2011. "We feel like pushing the envelope with ingredients has pushed its course. But how many jelly donuts are you going to throw into a batch of beer before you say enough's enough?" Travis Fritz, 2011. What do you have to say to 2011 Travis Fritz?
It's 2021, 10 years later, still not a jelly donut in sight. Good call, buddy.
I saw it, I heard it, and I laughed a little bit just because we're in the day and age of the pastry stouts and having so many ingredients. And I always say when I hear a beer and it has like 30-word description of how many different ingredients is in it, that's too many words.
Yeah.
Just give me a beer.
Yeah. I mean, people still make them, but name the regional or national avatar of jelly donut stouts.
Rogue.
How many do they make?
I don't know. That's the donut stout that they make. It's called donut stout. Is there a donut something? I don't know.
So one, right? I think it pretty much. I think it pretty much got pushed where it needed to go, and that's where it parked.
All right. Zach, it's 2022. Obviously, you have the ability to kind of expand, do what you want. What is a beer that you made before, or a beer that you really want to make again in 2022? I want you to set yourself a goal here on Better on Draft that come a year and a half from now, we can taste it, and we can not tell you how good it is, because if you like it, it's a good beer. That's all that matters. But what is a beer style that you want to make again that you just haven't had a chance to?
Haven't had a chance to make. I'd probably go with Grisette, to be honest. I mean, I'm really a huge fan of Saison, and I'd started off with the intentions of like a Saison focused brewery, and this was like 2014, 2015, where Saison was like the number 2 or 3 largest category in IRI data in like the nation, and then it just kind of like fizzled out, and Grisette has kind of gone along that way as well. But for me, yeah, absolutely, it's Grisette. You want to bring back that drinkability, just a pale, nice, top fermented beer that has a lot of character but a high drinkability. And that for me is Grisette. It's Pilsner. It's pale lager. So for me, they embody the same types of principles.
All right. So my birthday, July 10th, that's 10 months from now. I want you before July 10th, not for, but before. I'm giving you 10 months. I want you to make a grisette. Once you make it, we will push it. We will promote it. We will do everything for you to make sure that people go out and get a chance to try it. Because I'm going to be honest, I've heard the name maybe once or twice, so probably a lot of people listening to the show maybe not have heard that style of beer before. It's a farmhouse ale or close to a farmhouse ale, I think. Style of beer, correct? No? Just me?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're asking about grisette? Yeah, quasi. Yeah, it's a really archaic style of beer for sure.
Really archaic. I mean, I'm a big fan of Gruit, or Gruits, however you want to promote it. So I'd love
Gruit and grisette are, very, very, very different things, But yeah, we can have an entire podcast on grisette if you want to have an entire podcast on grisette and just quote unquote farmhouse beers in general, if you want to,
Well, let's say come 2022, once we can try to get out to the world again and have events that we can remember, and that's how we can tell our time is through events. Thank you, Travis, for that earworm of a shithole idea.
Makes sense, Ken. That's why it's still sticking with you, buddy. You're gonna live with it now.
I love you guys. I appreciate you guys joining us. I appreciate you guys taking the time. We're a little bit over on time, which is perfectly fine. Obviously, we could talk to you guys for hours, and I'm sure we'll have more episodes to talk about your business, your promotions, and what you guys are doing. That's going to do it for Better on Draft. This is the Michigan Series, episode number 17. Thank you so much, Dani, for joining us from Girls Pine Out. Obviously, if you are a woman in the industry or a woman who loves craft beer, go check out Girls Pine Out. Obviously, they are here to support you and show you that you're not the only woman who loves craft beer. Travis, Williamston, M43 Road, not beer, Road. You guys are carry out only right now. We've got the Hellas, the Fritz beer that's coming up. We got obviously all your beers. Give me your 20-second elevator pitch. What's coming up for the next month and a half?
We're gonna be resetting from a busy summer and keeping up as much as possible. We do have the Fritz Lager coming out in late October, early November. The one I'm most excited about is the alt beer that we're talking about today. And then we will be doing a coffee brown ale that we made a lot. Electron Brown is leaving cans for good, but going into nitro drafts. So folks who are interested in that can check it out.
Very happy.
Sorry to hear that's leaving cans.
You said nitro draft, and not too many people sell nitro draft in a growler or crowler. Can I still get it and come home and chug it? I mean, drink it properly.
No. That wasn't judging you on how fast you're gonna drink it. Yeah, sure. I mean, at the pub, I think we'll see. I mean, we'll fiddle around with it. We're piloting it now, so we're trying to kind of see where we can.
Here I am, not thinking fourth dimensionally. Obviously, you sell beer to restaurants and bars and stuff, so obviously that's where it would go. Yeah. For me, I'm more, I technically have a kegerator, so maybe I might give you a call for a bottle, or maybe might call one of your sales, Alex or Shane, and be like, hey.
I would love to legally transfer that beer to you, and whatever means is legal and legal.
Ken, you just have to open the crawler in your car while you're driving home, and you're good to go.
You have to get somebody to drive you back.
Yeah. If you're going to drink it all that fast, yeah.
You just have to backseat.
Travis, we actually have a nitrogen doser that should be arriving in November. So if you want to maybe actually put Electron Brown in cans, maybe we could talk about that in the future.
Maybe we'll see. It's that beer is one that we really love and keep around because we love it, but it doesn't. I mean, it sells okay, not great.
Yeah, we sell English Dark Mild too. We know all about that.
Sadly, recently when I went to Urbanrest, I didn't see that, but I had I think I messaged you. I think I had it was a Pils, and I just destroyed it. It was so clean, so crisp, so easy to drink, and like by the time I finished, I'm like, what the hell happened to my beer? Like I thought somebody stole it. That's how fast when a beer is that good.
Compliment you could give a brewer. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, let's talk real quick. You guys opened your 9 Mile store. Are you brewing there, first of all, for the Michigan Brewery Map app? I need to know.
So we are not actually producing wort. We are fermenting wort there, though. And so right now we're doing all barrel fermentation. And so the wort is produced at our Wolcott facility and then transferred over to the 9 Mile facility where it has its fermentation, then transferred back to the Wolcott facility for packaging, and then back to the 9 Mile facility for serving. And it's not every beer, but we are fermenting a series of beers. We're primarily doing just barrel fermented Saison there, to be quite honest. And then we have some long-term barrel aging projects there as well.
And you said Urbanrest, obviously you have a lot of outdoor seating. You're family friendly, correct?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We have 100 seats outside on the patio. We are dog friendly. We're absolutely family friendly. We're probably in one of the most family friendly and concentrated neighborhoods in Southeast Michigan. Yeah. I'm a new father as well, and so it's just a part of heading up there, hanging out, with your little guy or your little girl, and having a nice little beer.
And of course, go on, Travis.
It's a fantastic pub, dude. It's exactly what you feel. I feel like a pub in Ferndale should be. I really, really hope folks get out and see Zach's place down there. I haven't been to the one on 9 Mile, but the Walkout one is truly fantastic as well. So please go if you haven't gone.
Go check it out. Obviously, within the next 10 months, you're going to see a Grisette on tap. Keeping you to that, Zach. That's going to do it. Better on Draft, the Michigan Series number 17. We appreciate Old Nation and Urbanrest for joining us. Stay tuned to Better on Draft for information about the beer releases so you know when you can get those amazing beers. And no matter what you think of your beer, we think it's
Better on Draft.
Better on Draft. Have a good night.
Take care, guys. Thank you very much.
See ya.
See ya.